Hey gang, welcome back for another CirdecSongs interview. Before we get rolling, as always, I beg you to like and subscribe to the channel and comment, because I like bringing on guests that will induce comments, and today is no exception. I was introduced to this gentleman by way of him being an opening act for the Pineapple Thief in 2019. He was a one-man band, and I do mean band. There was sound coming from everywhere. And then he has done some wonderful duets with Marco Miniman. And if you're a progressive rock fan, you know who he is. And now he is fresh off a gig as part of Porcupine Tree, the legendary Porcupine Tree. I welcome from upstate New York, Mr. Randy McStine. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you?
I have no complaints. It's a beautiful day, and I get to talk to another talented musician. I am happy.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be with you.
I appreciate it. How is the world treating you these days?
Yeah, it's good. The weather is, deciding whether it wants to be spring or winter here in upstate New York, but all is well.
Excellent. Climate change is real, kids. Anyway, what month is this again? When I'm sitting here thinking, what do I want to ask him? It's almost like I have to go from the inside out or back to front. Let's do it this way. Let's start simple and work our way through. Tell us about your musical background. How did you get to where you are now?
So when I was really young, probably, I'm going to say like age 3, I would put my earliest musical memories. My dad, I grew up around a massive CD and record collection, and also a lot of VHS back then, early 90s. I was born in 88, so early 90s. He had a huge collection of concert films, some bootleg stuff, the kind of stuff that makes up YouTube now. But in the pre-YouTube age, he would go to record fairs and stuff and, find various shows. And I grew up with that just kind of constantly around. And he was a big guitar fan in particular. So I heard a lot of blues rock guitarists, a lot of progressive rock, and, various things. And that's what sort of infiltrated early on. I just immediately wanted to be a guitar player. That's the thing that I was drawn to. So there's pictures of me when I was a kid picking up various things and turning them sideways and pretending to strum them. And when I was about 5 years old, my parents got me an electric guitar, which I messed around with for close to a year before I started taking lessons. And from that point on, it's been in my hands ever since. About 2 or 3 years in, I think my parents noticed a real sense of progression in my playing. My tastes, of course, were intertwined with what my father was listening to and that kind of thing. But it was blues rock guitar that was probably the first thing that I could sort of grasp. That was the language that I was building as a lead guitar player. And yeah, by the time I was about 10 years old, I started playing out with various groups in town. I would just sit in and play a few tunes and play lead guitar, and started to build a reputation in the Binghamton, New York area. And yeah, started playing in cover bands and writing music and on and on.
Nice. Anybody in particular really strike your fancy? It's the proverbial "who are your influences" type question.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd say early on, as far as guitar players go, in this sort of blues rock domain, it would be people like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Sure. Gary Moore at that time had sort of transitioned into the Still Got the Blues era of his career. And so that was a huge influence. And then, in the hard rock realm, people like Michael Schenker and Uli Jon Roth, I had some of that, and then the progressive rock influences. So it's, there's just so many over the years, but I'm trying to think of the early influences. A band called King's X was a huge influence early on. I heard their music a lot. So Ty Tabor, I think, is one of the sort of unsung guitar heroes. So yeah, it just kind of goes all over the place.
It's eclectic. That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Eclecticism is key. You have a knack for the loop. Where did where did that start?
Well, there was this pedal that came out called the Boomerang, and I think I got one of those in the early 2000s. And I had it for years, and I didn't really do much with it, to be honest. And it wasn't until I started going out and playing solo gigs, solo cover gigs, really doing like classic rock stuff, that I started to utilize it. Now it's kind of ubiquitous, like everybody has one. But at the time, it wasn't so oversaturated yet. And I just really enjoyed the creativity of being able to layer sound on sound. And I was also starting to get into ambient music and stuff. So I was trying to incorporate a lot of different elements just into my local sort of bar gig, which I tell this story. It kind of culminated once I was playing this gig at it's like a bistro gelato place, and I was doing my classic rock repertoire, but I had worked up this like half-hour Pink Floyd medley, and there was a lot of improv and a lot of looping and stuff. And at one point, this guy in front of me just goes, "We're not all on drugs out here." And I think about that often. It was kind of a funny moment, but it was also a teachable moment too, because it was like I found myself at odds with what I wanted to do creatively, even in a cover situation. I always wanted to bring something interesting to it, to which I'm sure many people that were in that room were enjoying it, but also people just saying like, "Why is this guy doing this here?"
There's always that one guy though, and I've reached that stage because, I'm old. You say you were born in 88, and all I can think is, oh, God, I'm so old. But, he yells that to you, and I want to jump up and yell, well, he ain't playing Freebird. Okay, so.
I have played Freebird. But yeah, so, I mean, fast forward to when you saw me in 2019 doing a solo show. It was important to me in that context, also given the band that I was opening for, to put together a set of music that was, reflective of my songs, of course, but because it was just me and I didn't want to have backing tracks or anything like that.
Right.
The use of looping just becomes another tool to build arrangements. I think it can be overused a lot. It can be a crutch, but if it's done tastefully, let's say, and that's, subjective, I think it's a really powerful thing that you can bring to the performance and material.
I tend to agree. Where's the line for you? It's interesting you say using looping as a crutch. Where do you personally draw the line? It doesn't have to be a universal axiom, but where does it feel like enough is enough for you?
If I think back to, I'll just throw it back to myself. When I was playing the types of gigs I was talking about, I would just go on these tangents, every song became a vehicle to go off into some 10-minute, ordeal where I'm just layering and layering and layering and soloing. And I think you can find yourself falling into a pattern of like everything just kind of being the same after a while, because it can be gimmicky. Obviously there are people who have taken it to an extreme level where they've got multiple instruments patched all across the stage. I mean, that's amazing. And the technology that's available to do that is really, really cool. I haven't really broken it out into that kind of thing myself, but I think I wanted to approach it I wanted to make sure that I had some songs that could live without it first, and then bring it in. So that's what I kind of tried to do. And
makes sense. There's that old saying I used to hear, a song is a good song when you can just play it by yourself on an acoustic guitar.
That's where I'm at. That's really that's what I'm sort of striving for these days, which is if the foundation is strong, the layering is the fun part and how you dress it up.
Right.
But I think myself and, plenty of others would probably admit falling into the category of sometimes building a song around the details first, and it doesn't always add up to something good. in terms of it being a song, it could be sonically interesting, like
Right.
when you base things around production first and maybe the song second. But I think if you're starting with a really strong song first, and look, there's so many, you can't put a one size fits all situation on this, but that's where I find myself these days.
That's fair.
There's this great John Lennon quote about a Beatles song that I really love called "And Your Bird Can Sing," which after years after reflecting on it, he wasn't such a fan of it, and he described it as, I'm going to paraphrase this, as a fancy wrapping paper around an empty box.
Interesting.
And that stuck with me because the point was he just didn't feel like there was something in the box. It had all these really nice things that were dressing it up, but he just didn't think the song was very good. Now, I don't agree. I think it's a great song.
I like the song myself.
but that really stuck with me, and it got me to think about a lot of the things that I've written, and I would sort of go through and in my head kind of put it in different categories. I'm like, can this song just live with an acoustic guitar and voice? And if it can't, you have to be confronted with that sort of head on. So the songs that I picked for that tour of the Pineapple Thief, none of them really started as songs that could be necessarily, like, I didn't write them as acoustic guitar and voice. They were actually written in this full production mindset, and then I had to scale them back. And it taught me a lot about my own writing and the things that I was tending to do and how I might change that moving forward.
Makes sense. If I may be Spinal Tapian, the key is not to turn everything into Jazz Odyssey once you start playing. You ran us right up to it. How does one find himself opening for the Pineapple Thief?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this will eventually lead into the Porcupine Tree conversation as well, but you'd have to go back to 2011. I had done one record under the name Lo-Fi Resistance called The Deep Breath, which came out in 2010. And I met Gavin Harrison early on in 2011. And that's a whole story in itself. But essentially, I had this song, which ended up being the title track of the second lo-fi record called Chalk Lines. And, it was a situation where we were working virtually. He did a song, and then he did another song, and then another, and then it turned into him playing on the whole record. And, we stayed in touch over the years. Obviously, Porcupine Tree was, at that point, not technically active. We met after they had played, what ended up being their last show all the way until this past tour. Right. Nobody knew it at the time, of course, but it was the beginning of Steven's transition into his solo career and the band sort of being on ice. But that's all preamble to say that we stayed in touch over the years and, would check in. And when the Pineapple Thief announced their tour dates for America, I just reached out to him and said, "Are you guys going to have an opening act?" And he immediately came back asking me if that was something that I was interested in. So the timing, these are those sort of unexplainable things. I had just literally the week before done a gig at the Bitter End in New York City, a solo gig, to just workshop some material because I hadn't focused on doing a solo show in a very long time. And I was just working it out, and I happened to pay the sound man at the Bitter End to record the show and send it to me. And that's what I used essentially as an audition because Gavin, they didn't know what the context was going to be. Mm-hmm. he knew the album that we did together, and he likes my songs and that kind of stuff, but he didn't have any reference for what would I actually do. So I said, well, I just did this a few days ago. It's kind of rough, but it's what I'm, aiming for. And, that got me through. So I spent the rest of the time leading up to that tour, which was November of 2019, just really, really working the set list that I had planned to do. And I was booking coffee shops and gigs and, just various things to really get at the core of what it is that I was trying to do with the arrangements and the presentation. And I felt like I was still right up to the very last date that we did, still sort of modifying it from night to night, because you don't really know until you start doing it in front of people. I mean, you can,
right.
You can play in a room all day, but you don't really know what it's going to be like when you step out on the stage in front of an audience that isn't there to see you.
That's a good point.
So I really felt a sense of growth from night to night, and it really changed. I mean, it changed my life, but it changed my whole outlook as a performer and as a solo artist, to go out just with an acoustic guitar and play my own songs that 99% of the people in the audience hadn't heard before, and try to leave the night feeling like it connected with enough people.
Right. Well, you won me over. I think it did.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
You won me over, no doubt. It's got to be, and you're used to it, but it's still got to be a bit nerve-wracking, because I've heard people say that if you really want to make yourself a better musician, be part of a trio, because there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
You have to do something, and you're at the next level. You're out there by yourself. So, I mean, is there ever any trepidation, any hesitation about what you're doing, or are you just plowing forward these days?
I mean, because I've had that experience, I'm more comfortable with it. But at the time, it definitely felt, there's no net. There's nothing. There's nobody to play off of. And in your trio comment, I totally agree. I mean, I think a trio tends to be my favorite vehicle as a musician, because the personalities of each person in the trio really matters, and it's not like it doesn't in a bigger ensemble, but you're really leaning on each other. Like, hey, if I'm soloing, there's just those two guys behind me. There's no extra thing, and so to scale it down to just one person, you have to say, like, well, what is going to carry this? And I knew that stepping on stage with an acoustic guitar, just being one person, it automatically puts a certain image in your head of like, oh, I know what this is going to be. Just be some guy playing some songs. And I tried to design the set so that it was constantly hitting you with some surprises sonically. There was this like 4-minute sort of ambient noise piece that I did, building all of these layers of sound with effects pedals, but still generated from the acoustic guitar. Right. And it was funny to read comments from people who it was a dividing line. It was like, that was mind blowing, or what was that? And that's great. I don't need it to be a winner for everybody, but I think doing that, going out there every night, playing that set, singing my songs, and being able to really connect with their audience, it put me in the room with Gavin Harrison, basically every day for a month. So he got to see me in a certain context. We got to know each other better as friends, not just, email pen pals.
Right.
And clearly that made an impression that carried through to him calling me almost 2 years later to ask me to, join Porcupine Tree for the tour.
And I'm going to get to that, because that's got to be shocking, thrilling, shocking at the same time. But I don't want to blow past Marco.
No, no, no. We'll get
I
there.
want to get to him first, and it's all in the same family because somebody would ask, well, how did you get to Marco Miniman? Well, Marco played with Steven Wilson, so there's got to be a connection in there somewhere using Gavin kind of as a I would put it as a focal point, but I have no idea. So you tell me.
Yeah, so it's actually not. It's not related in that way. I mean, it's related.
Shows what I know.
Well, it's related in the sense that I think you find, as you're working in similar circles or even the same circles, those degrees of separation just get shorter and shorter. So as far as the drummers that I had worked with prior to Marco, it's Gavin and Nick DiVirgilio and a few others who are known in those circles. Right. The actual connecting piece for Marco and I is a guy named Dave Kersner.
Okay. Yep, I know.
And Dave and we met also through this Lo-Fi Resistance record that Gavin played on called Chalk Lines. And Dave was in a band called Sound of Contact.
Love that band.
Yeah, and I did a stint with them in their live band as well. And then in 2018, there was a Sound of Contact sort of offshoot called In Continuum. And Marco played on the record, and I played on a fair amount of the record as well. And Dave put together a couple of live shows for us to play, and he asked Marco and he asked me. And so that's what actually connected us and put us in the same room. And it was through that experience and actually playing Reggie's in Chicago. Mm-hmm. That was the second gig that we played. We just really bonded, not just musically, of course, but personal stuff. I mean, just music that we were talking about. And Marco's he's such a fun person and just really full of energy and life. And that sort of segued into, in 2019, just, getting to know each other's material personally. He sent me a song to sing on. I think I sent him a song to play drums on of mine first. And he liked that. And then he asked me if I would sing on something. So I did that. So we did this little back and forth thing. And it kind of hit me one night that it might be fun if we just did a collaborative EP. Just pick a couple songs each and just, finish them and see what happens. And the process was just so enjoyable that it turned into a full record. And then the COVID lockdown hit, and we had already, we were pretty much already at the end of the first record, but that really put things in focus of like, well, it's just the two of us now in our own homes working on stuff. And we just got hyper focused and, built this really cool, I think, grassroots sort of fan base around the first one. And, you have to put yourself back in that time where everybody's just trying to sort of stay connected and relevant to the world through social media and posting videos and stuff. So we built this core group of people that were paying attention to what we were doing, and we put the record out in the summer of 2020. And that first album was like, I haven't listened to it in a while, but it was just a really fun sort of rock album, but with some crazy musical ideas packed into what were mostly like 3-minute songs. We were really on this. We didn't plan it this way, but it's just where my mindset was at. And I think maybe his too, of just wanting to sort of get back to a time when, record like Van Halen records were like 35 minutes,
right.
kind of thing. And it's just like, you're just hitting it hard and then you get out. And, it allows people a chance to sort of digest it in a chunk and then just want to replay it. So like, what was that? I want to hear it again. As opposed to some sprawling 80-minute or, God forbid, double CD. Right. I used to buy CDs and when I was in my proggiest of prog phase, put the CD in the CD player, and the total running time would say like 79 minutes and 58 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't have time for that anymore. Yesterday was I don't know when this is going to air, but yesterday, of course, was the 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon being released.
Yes.
And, if you want to hold that up as one of the iconic, great sort of, masterpieces, of course, that it is, look at the running time. It's 43 minutes, I think.
I was surprised. I played it yesterday, and I was surprised by how quickly it was over. That's it?
Yeah, it's like, but what would you do? I mean, you wouldn't add anything
it's
to it.
Perfectly lean to it.
So that first record was like really fun, kind of short, just hard-hitting thing. And we just kind of looked at each other and said, like, well, let's just go make another one. So the second one came out in December of 2020. And, that album is, if I think about my entire catalog of music, that definitely goes near the top in terms of just, the ambition, the way it sounds. The songs are really interesting. It's a beautiful, chaotic mess of a record. And in the best way possible, I think. Yep. It's a complete roller coaster, and it's really a reflection of two people just kind of throwing it all in there, because we both have really eclectic music collections and tastes, and just Marco's abilities, not only as a drummer, but the way he thinks about music as a composer. Obviously, he plays other instruments as well. Just a really unique, special person to make music with. And so I mean, we really had that full year of just being super, super connected.
Right.
And, we have a third album that is really, I kind of put it on my shoulders at the moment to finish, because it's kind of been sitting there for a while, all the songs and stuff. I think after that first year of COVID, there was this sense for me that, like, okay, something's supposed to happen now.
Right.
And then not for the project necessarily, but just there was this sort of rush for people to get back out, and then it was like retreat again, and it just, right. I sort of lost my my momentum, and it was really hard to sort of get it back. And then I got that call from Gavin, September of 21. And then that changed everything too, because like suddenly I couldn't really think about anything else other than this thing that wasn't going to happen from like a year from then. But it took up so much mental space for me that I found myself just not really as engaged with the process of making the music. So there's a part of me that feels a little guilty about that, actually. But I think having waited till now isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Marco's been out with the Aristocrats touring a lot. They've got a record, I think, coming out this year, and they're going to be playing. They tour like crazy.
Oh yeah,
when they're doing it. And the Porcupine Tree thing for me, obviously, is kicks open the door to a lot of visibility that I didn't have before, which vis-a-vis I think will really help the next thing that Marco and I do. The combination of us just both being out there, because we're both really proud of those records, and part of me wishes that more people had heard them, of course.
Right.
But
we'll get there.
It's always there, it's always there to be discovered. And I think that when we do get the next record out, I think that's going to be really exciting. So
sounds like it will be. I have a strange brain, because I have like a visual metaphor where I just kind of picture you guys sitting in a studio, and there's a big funnel in the middle of the room, and you're just tossing all of your influences into into that funnel, and let's see what comes out on this side. So that's almost as scary to me as being by myself, because this is what I'm bringing. What are you bringing? and hoping that those two things
Yeah.
coalesce.
Well, it was a remote process. So that made it really interesting too, because you had two people who were on opposite coasts, him in California, me in New York. And essentially the whole thing mostly happened out of just text messages every day. We were just constantly in touch. If I was listening to a XTC record or something, we would talk about that and whatever it was. Hey, have you heard this? Have you checked this out? So it was just kind of two music nerds geeking out and making music that, it was really, I got to think back now. It was really fun to receive songs from one another.
Right.
So oh, where's this coming from? And as we went along, and this is probably 6-7 months into the lockdown at this point. So, people we're all getting a little
stir crazy,
and you're trying to keep things interesting. But the songs just kept getting more and more adventurous and kind of funny and weird. And we were both just game to lean into that, So I found myself writing some stuff that I would have never written before, but it was having him. It was like the perfect foil, because because when you're writing with a guy like that in mind, you realize well, we could do just about anything we want to do.
Well, for example, what song jumps to your mind when you think about that? Something you never would have done before.
What I would call side 2 of the second record. There's this whole suite of 1 to 1.5 minute songs. There's a song called "The Flame" that he wrote, which is this super aggressive. It's almost like Stone Cold Crazy and Motorhead kicked up. It's super heavy and dark. And then I wrote this thing called Old Sparky. It's almost like a thrash metal Mr. Bungle thing. I'm just playing with elements and strange sounds and voices and odd lyrics.
That's fun, though.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was very, very expressive and just fun. So.
Excellent. And I try not to make these things about me, but you talk about two music nerds geeking out. I'm like, okay, XTC, awesome. Yes, don't go great, awesome. I'll do everything that I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that day comes, and you, how does one get asked to be part of Porcupine Tree?
How does one? Well, it was the first day of fall, actually. I remember that distinctively. I had gone out for a walk with my dog, and I came back. And I saw that I had a missed call from Gavin. And again, we don't have a regular phone call kind of friendship. I mean, we stay in touch, email, text, whatever. But I thought it was odd to have a sort of unplanned phone call.
Right.
And then I had a message from him too. Are you around today? I said, yeah, I'll be. We could chat in 10 minutes. And he didn't waste any time, really. How you doing, Randy? Oh, good. So listen, and
you're not doing anything.
yeah. And of course, it was just asking me if I was interested in doing it, and of course, I mean, immediately, you say yes to something like that. And he had the details that he had, but a lot of it was kind of okay, well, here's the deal. Nobody knows that we're coming back yet. There's going to be this whole process of getting from this point to this point, and you can't tell anybody
right
about it. So that created some very unique situations for me, because obviously, I had to tell my wife, but nobody could know about it, including my closest collaborators. And that it did weigh on me a bit after time, because it felt like I was living a double life, but that second life hadn't actually happened.
Right.
It was just, you know, you're in, but we're not going to get together for months. We're not going to make an announcement, all this kind of stuff. So, mentally it was strange to sort of like acknowledge, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Porcupine Tree, but it didn't feel real because there's nothing I could point to that could prove it, you know? Right. So it was very odd. And then we finally got together for a week in April of 22. And, you know, it wasn't framed as an audition. It was actually specifically not framed as an audition, but it was. I mean, let's be honest. You know,
sure.
They had to make sure that myself and Nate Navarro, the bassist, they knew on paper, of course, that it was going to be really good. That's why they called us. But you don't know until you get in a room with people what it's really going to be like, both musically and personality.
Right.
So we did a week, and you know, we learned the new record and a few of the back catalog tunes. We blasted through them, and it was very clear that it was going to be great. And it was still the case that we didn't know when the announcement was going to happen. So that was a really crazy month for me because I had to do, as you can imagine, a ton of prep for getting together with those guys. Obviously, you only get one chance to make a first impression.
Sure.
A lot of things on the technical side that I had to learn, like MIDI programming, and you know, I had to invest in a lot of things to make it what it needed to be. So I'm prepping for that, and then I immediately came back and I did some solo dates with the band Riverside, which then went directly into rehearsals for McStine and Miniman to play our debut gigs on something called Cruise to the Edge. So it was just like 1 week after the other. I had to sort of like clean the hard drive and, you know, focus on just what was right in front of me. And it was a lot. I mean, I felt it was the closest I ever felt to being like you know, training for an Olympic event or something, because it was just so much music, so many different configurations. But again, also the secrecy of it was weird. You know, like I'm arranging things for McStine and Miniman gigs while I'm in a hotel in the UK and nobody knows that I'm there. It was like, you know, it was
desperately not to tell anybody that Darth Vader is your father.
Yeah, right. So it was definitely weird. But we got on Cruise to the Edge. The shows went really well. There was some strange weather stuff happening, as might occur when you're in the middle of the ocean.
Sure.
But the timing was, it was like a storybook. You couldn't plan it any better. The announcement of the touring members for Porcupine Tree came out officially on the last day of the cruise, and I felt like king for a day. You know, it was really just one of those unique, I can't even really describe the feeling. It was like everywhere I went was this understanding that everybody had just found out, you know, including all the musicians on the show,
sure.
And who are friends of mine, and people who I was just meeting that week who had come to the McStine and Miniman shows and had really, you know, been blown away by them. And then to like immediately follow up with this thing of like, you know, Randy McStine's going to be in the band. Yeah, it was an incredible thing, you know, and there was this big sort of last night party for the artists on the ship, where a lot of us got COVID, by the way. And
perfect.
But you know, I wouldn't trade it. It was a beautiful thing, and you also have to remember that after almost 2 years of all of us not seeing each other and not getting to play music, it was extra special, you know, because
sure.
you really felt that love and camaraderie among musicians and among fans alike. You know, it was just a really, really great way to well, it was a great thing. And yeah, so that was May of 22. And then, you know, I had the summer to try to have fun and kick back, but obviously I was just so focused on what was about to.
I was about to ask it, the weight of the Porcupine Tree catalog. That's got to be a bit daunting. I mean, did it ever occur to you what you were doing, or do you just put your head down and go to work?
A little bit of both. I was never necessarily worried about it, technically speaking, like from the playing perspective. I know that, I mean, I had my time with that music as a fan, as a teenager specifically. I mean, In Absentia, I bought when I was 15. And, they became one of my favorite bands all the way until their hiatus, because for my generation of fans, they were a band that was, they were really making waves, and it was really exciting to be a part of, to watch them sort of advance from playing clubs to theaters, and each tour was getting bigger and all that kind of stuff. So if I felt any kind of pressure, it was mainly around just wanting to, honor the legacy. Right. And knowing that there were going to be a lot of people who were going to be skeptical and even disappointed or angry that you
walked right into what I was thinking.
Yeah, that certain people weren't going to be on stage. And just as a quick aside, I don't want to linger there too long, but both Wes and Colin are friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And, so that made it strange too, on a personal level. I felt like not just the responsibility to the band, obviously to the fans, but also specifically to Wes and the amazing work that he did with the band. I mean, those aren't easy shoes to fill, as everyone knows. And I felt like I had to find that balance between, obviously respecting what he did with them and what he brought to the table, but also owning it in my own way, which is why they didn't call me to be him. They called me to be me. And because what do I want to say here? I had an opportunity with the new material because it hadn't been touched yet.
Right.
I could really put my stamp on that. But with the classic stuff, you have these different options, because you have the studio recordings, which are, frankly, I mean, that's Steven,
Right.
And then you have these live documents of them as a great live band, and some of those versions became really definitive for the fans. So, some of the songs I felt like I had to just find that line between the two. But ultimately, I tried to serve the role and what Wes had done, but also going back to the source material and finding my own way into it. And I feel really confident about my contribution and what we did as a band. Of course, it's no small feat to put two new members into a band that had such a long history for a limited engagement with a ton of expectation on the line to deliver. So, it's a really long-winded way of saying it's not that I felt nervous about not being able to deliver personally, but you don't know how it's going to translate to the fans. And it seemed that overall people seemed to be quite happy with the shows that they attended. And I'm happy about that.
It worked out. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people that's like, okay, well, where's this going to go? Because there is the weight of expectation. I mean, is he going to hit that note?
Right.
Or does that note go by the wayside now that it's you instead of Wes? So I guess I would ask you, is there a feeling as you come into these songs where you say, okay, I'm me, but whatever I do, I got to hit that note? Does that come through your mind?
Well, I mean, yeah, there are main marks that have to be met. Not specifically things that Wes did, and that's no slight at all. Like I said, it's going back. Like I just had multiple references to pull from. So you listen to a live version and say like, okay, this is the arrangement we're doing. Yeah, it's learning the parts because obviously that worked. So there's it's not like I'm going to come in and completely try to change the formula. So a lot of it really is just, well, that's what worked. So we're going to do that. And then other instances like guitar solos, that I had leeway with that. And I tried to put my own stamp on it where I could, but also understanding the role of the sideman, so to speak, is you got to know the material that you're playing, and you can't try to put it too far out of the zone that it's meant to be in. So Steven's guitar playing as a lead guitar player really tends to lean in the more blues-based David Gilmour side of things. There was no reason to bring in unnecessary shred guitar or things that just wouldn't, work. So I tried to keep it within a reasonable zone that I thought was appropriate. And I think the other thing I would say actually is just from the perspective of trust in the band, from a fan perspective, I could understand the skepticism and being like, okay, what is this going to be like?
Right.
But at the same time, you got to take a step back and say, if you love this band and you trust them, you have to trust that they've made the decisions that they intended to make. They wouldn't put it all on the line in such a way if they didn't believe in the decisions they were making.
Yeah, this isn't done on a whim. There's intent there. So
there is something I find a little silly and a bit demeaning, to kind of assume that they wouldn't know what's best for them.
Right.
And anyway.
And this is just me talking. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but there's no group of people more dangerous to a band than their fans. I mean, because they have this, like Robert Fripp says, expectation is a prison. But people say expectation is a prison in which we dwell, and I can be just as guilty as anybody else. But I love that I had the thought about seeing you in the band that I've had about other things that I was kind of trepidatious about when I walk away, and I said, "Man, it would have been a shame to miss that." that worked. You don't have to reveal if you don't know, or if you do know. Is there any chance that any of those shows were recorded for posterity for future release?
We did record in Amsterdam.
Why is it always Amsterdam?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just something about the Netherlands, Amsterdam. There's always there. I don't know.
Yeah. But and I'm not giving away any secrets there. When people walked into the venue, there were signs plastered everywhere. That there was basically, by walking through the doors, you were giving consent to be a part of a live filming situation. So that's all I know, is that we captured that show, and to be determined what happens with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you come off the road. Man, I've just been out there with Porcupine Tree. Is there a sense of letdown, or are you just more excited to get into what's next for yourself?
Well, I think anytime finishing a tour, there is always a sort of letdown period. And, because you're out there living a life that is completely unique and, in the true definition of the word, extraordinary. And this tour, of course, for me, was the culmination of basically like a life's work to get to this specific moment. The fact that we have more dates coming up this summer, we're doing some festivals in Europe, at least allowed me the letdown to not be so hard.
Fair.
You know, because I didn't know that we were going to get another shot at it, to be honest. I mean, I was trying to mentally and emotionally prepare myself for the tour to that's it. And that's difficult because it's like, I obviously wanted to go into it treating the situation with as much respect and to give as much of myself to it as I could. But that's very hard to know that you're gonna basically take this thing out for a spin and then you're gonna put it away for good. And
to the garage, as it were.
Yeah. So the fact that we're basically getting like another mini tour, or let's just call it a tour, out of the festival dates that we're playing, means that I can sort of delay that feeling a little bit, which is nice. But I'm also like, I'm still prepping for that as well, because after this, maybe that is it. And I know it can't go on forever, and that's always been clear. But it's such a special thing to be a part of, and obviously things move on, and there's whatever's next. So where I'm at now is like, yeah, we've got these dates coming up, and I'll kick into that mode soon enough. June is when we've got some dates starting again, but I'm fully engaged in sort of solo Randy McStine music at the moment. As you could imagine, a lot of soul searching over the last few months and really over the last couple of years. And I try to put myself back into my shoes in 2019, having finished that tour with the Pineapple Thief, thinking about what I thought I was going to do next. And obviously the world had other plans, and I made these other things that happened as a result of all that, and it's all been great. But there's this feeling of like unfinished business, of like, well, who was that guy then? What was he trying to do before these other things happen? And I'm not somebody that really dwells in the past all that much with my own work, but I am having to recognize that I haven't made a proper solo album in several years. And I've had so many different musical experiences since then, and life experiences, and I'm feeling like, yeah, it's like really time to do that. Not only to do that, but to make an album that is very much a person who's knocking on their mid-30s trying to figure things out, So I think it's going to be very experimental, but also very grounded at the same time. I find myself going back to, just singer-songwriters and stuff that I love, and things that aren't anything to do with complex music.
Right.
But I can't help the other things that seep in. There's a certain way I want to hear music, and I think it's up to any artist to put their own spin on even elements that are common and that we've heard before. But nobody's going to do it like you or me or anybody else. That's not an ego stroke. It's just to say that we all have, unique finger prints.
Sure.
So
we can't all be Jeff Beck.
Yeah, right. No kidding. And that's another thing too. It's feeling the weight of the, mortality of these legends that we're losing today. Wayne Shorter. I
was going to bring that up. Yeah. Lost another Titan today.
Yeah. So, this has been a rough year. It's been a rough few years. And that's not going to stop, of course. It's just going to keep coming. But it does give me a sense of urgency. And Jeff Beck was a huge one, just one of my, I should have said that at the outset when we were talking about guitar players. The only reason I didn't mention him then is because he was not a part of my earliest influences, but
that makes sense.
But when he arrived in my consciousness, that was it. It was like number one from age 11 till the rest of my life,
Sure.
Just as a guitar player. So that's been, heavy for a lot of us, of course, but it's also given me a sense of urgency of like remembering why I chose the instrument or why it chose me, and almost like that feeling a sense of responsibility to do something with it. You listen to that guy's catalog from the Yardbirds all the way to the end. I mean, the stuff he was still doing at the very end, his playing was just unbelievable.
Still an innovator up to the very end.
So it's like to not, look at that and be inspired and say like, well, because the other thing is it makes me think of how much time any of us have, not to get morbid, but it's like my father passed in 2017. He was 53. He had a massive heart attack.
Wow.
And it's like,
condolences.
Thank you. But that's like in 18, 19 years from now, I could be that age. But it's like, it gets me thinking like, well, what if that was it? What do I want to do with the time? And I suppose I'll always feel that way. But I think this solo record that I'm making is really important to me because I think having been associated with Porcupine Tree and all these other things that I've done, but specifically Porcupine Tree being the last thing in this really monumental thing, I see it as an opportunity to sort of reintroduce myself as an artist. And what do I want to say now? How do I want to present myself? Because I've had conversations with people who are almost expecting me to come out with something that is in a sort of Porcupine Tree vein. And it's like, you don't know anything about me then, because it's like, I want to go very far from that. Not because I don't love it, but just, it's like, why would I do that?
The world's a big place musically. And my first thought was, I hope you do a complete 180. Just go, go that way and see what's over there. That's
kind of where I'm at, to be honest. It's not like I'm going to burn all my boats and bridges, but I have a sense of that, which is that I'm sort of trying to recognize how I've landed where I've landed. Mm-hmm. Because it all just goes back to the music that I've created. It's things that I made put me in touch with other creative people who wanted to make music together. And we go off in all these different areas, and I'm kind of finding myself, back at home base saying like, okay, what was I doing 3 years ago? What was I doing 6 years ago? What was I doing 15 years ago? What is this whole arc that I've been on? And maybe it's time to, maybe I climbed a particular mountain and it's time to go find another one. So yeah, it's an exciting time, but it's also, as you could imagine, it fills me with a lot of questions and a lot of,
it's transitional is what popped into my head,
I think it is. I think this is a transitional time.
Couldn't agree more. And I can't think of a better way to let you off the hook other than to say, this is your time. Shamelessly plug yourself. Where can we find your music? Where should we be looking?
Thank you. Bandcamp is the best place. It holds the most of my catalog, and I run it essentially. So anybody who makes a purchase there, that's going directly to the artists, in my case anyway. So randymcstine.bandcamp.com. You'll find the Lo-Fi Resistance recordings there. McStine and Miniman, all of my solo work. I have a subscription thing that I do there as well that, might be of interest to some people. And some of the normal social media places, I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I don't do Twitter, and I haven't jumped into the whole TikTok thing. It's a whole other conversation. We could do an hour on social media, but
yes.
But yeah, those are the best places to find me. Bandcamp, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm around. The one thing I'd say about social media is I'm sure, like a lot of us, I've had definitely a love-hate relationship with it.
To be certain,
mostly leans more toward the not loving it side. But to kind of wrap up the point of what I just said about getting to reintroduce myself, I am finding that these days there's a playfulness and a sort of opportunity to just be a little bit more loose and to just show people different aspects of my creativity. So, one of the things I was conscious of is like, well, people are going to say, oh, he's the guitar player from ...
Right.
Okay, well, maybe I want to post a video of me playing a mellotron part or getting behind a drum kit, or just I want to show people that I'm somebody who just loves music and likes to be musical, and I like to make sounds. And it's not about being a guitar player. It's just about just wanting to make music, period. So I'm trying to see the fun in getting to sort of, present myself in a different way from day to day, and to kind of keep zigging and zagging, to not just get stuck in, I'm a guitar player and this is what I do and this is what guitar players do. So the fact that I'm working on this new solo record means that I have an opportunity to, let people into that process a little bit. And it's been fun because context, you can really play with that. And people who just came to a show and saw me do one thing, they're not expecting this thing that I'm going to post today or next week. And that's just the way the world is now. I mean, you got a lot of prominent artists who have been on labels for years and years and years who are just saying, like, we're just going to do it ourselves. And that's the key to connecting with people. So
awesome. That is perfect. Randy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us. For all you kids out there in music land, please seek out this man's music. He's amazing. You'll enjoy yourself, I guarantee it. We will see you down the road.
Yes, thank you
for your time, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, take care, man.